A good evening and very warm welcome to everyone. I'm Usama Khilji with another episode of DigiPod on DawnNews English. So today we're going to be talking about military partnerships with private technology companies. And in the age of technology, where we have all these technology companies that have expanded so much and hold so much data, billions of people are using technology every day, sharing their most intimate details with chatbots and uploading day-to-day activities online. How does all of this factor in when these companies go ahead and sign contracts with governments, including militaries? So to discuss this and a lot more, we're joined today by Steven Feldstein, who's a senior fellow at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace based in Washington, D.C. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Osama. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Great. So to begin with, Stephen, you had a very good piece out in Foreign Policy last week, in which you talked about how Anthropic refused to, go ahead with their contract with Pentagon, and then OpenAI instead decided to go ahead with that contract. So just for the information of our viewers, if you could summarize what exactly, went down,
hmm
and your thoughts on it, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been kind of a slowly brewing situation for, I think, a couple months, actually. Part of it is that it relates to a set of larger issues, which is that we are at a moment right now where the products from AI startups that are potentially worth billions of dollars, certainly the contracts that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, are just being incorporated into militaries and are starting to see the products used. So in the case right here, you actually have a company, Anthropic, with its LLM model, its AI model, Claude, that is already being used by classified networks, by the military and intelligence services in the U.S. And so part of the problem was that this contract initially was signed last year in July. It's a $200 million contract. And for now at least, Claude is by far and away considered to be the best when it comes to its use for the U.S. military. So what has happened that in the course of the last few months, as this contract has been deployed, there have been growing questions about differences and safeguards. In particular, there were two things that have risen up. One, should Claude be used in relation to looking at information collected from mass surveillance? And then two, or for the deployment of mass surveillance. And then two, should Claude be used for lethal autonomous weapons? And there actually wasn't as much daylight, I think, as people have made it out to be. But there was enough differences of opinion between who would get to call the shots at the end of the day. Anthropic, the company, in terms of whether the uses that the military was deploying were appropriate or not, or the military. And it became very wrapped up in a power struggle and a political argument, with the military essentially saying, look, we are the ones who always get to decide how technologies are used, not the contractor. And Anthropic saying this is a different situation. These tools are bringing an unprecedented ability to do things that can undermine democracy. So therefore, we think it's important that we have a firm agreement about what those safeguards will be. So they were going back and forth, and then it became a very public argument. And last week was really a surreal moment. On Friday, after continuing disagreement, although what I actually understand from reporting was that the two sides were very close. President Trump weighed in around 3:47 p.m. in the afternoon, essentially putting the pressure on and saying that no company will tell us how to run our military. And then, as they were getting close to a 5 p.m. deadline to reach terms, what ended up happening is, and this was just new reporting that came out, apparently there was a negotiation taking place between Anthropic's team and the undersecretary at the Pentagon, Emil Michael. They asked for Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, to come in right before 5 p.m. to try to hammer out the last few details. He was in a meeting, wasn't able to attend. Emil Michael said, well, forget it. The deal is, there's no deal. And that's when, at 5:01, a little later on, Pete Hegseth uh, basically said Anthropic is a supply chain risk. No company that is doing business with the Pentagon is allowed to also do business with Anthropic commercially or otherwise. And now things have completely blown up between the two. So we reached a point where there was almost a deal. A couple personalities in the room weren't able to kind of reach the finish line, and then the whole thing blew up politically. And now who knows where we are? In the meantime, in the next 24 hours, OpenAI had already been close to a deal. They're actually a real nemesis to Anthropic. Sam Altman and Dario Amodei do not get along. I think recently in India AI Summit, they even refused to hold hands together
Yeah.
for an announcement. Maybe you saw that live. And so Altman saw an opportunity to get close to what Amadei was asking for in terms of safeguards, swooped in, and now has become presumably the new AI model of choice in the future for the Pentagon. Although, at least when it comes to the Iran war, OpenAI's model is definitely not ready. In fact, Claude's model is still being used to guide strikes as of right now. So that just does show you a little bit the reality, moving a little bit from the political. But that's the fight. I mean, maybe that was a little long, but that gives you the details behind where things currently are at the moment.